The bright studio lights of Loose Women gleamed down on the familiar set where daytime television often delivers light-hearted banter and celebrity chats. But on this particular morning everything felt charged with an undercurrent of tension as the audience settled into their seats with eager anticipation for a special guest. Rowan Atkinson, the legendary comedian known worldwide for his iconic silent comedy as Mr. Bean and his sharp wit in Blackadder, had surprisingly agreed to appear on the show to discuss his long career, recent projects, and thoughts on the evolving landscape of entertainment. The panel that day featured the usual mix of hosts and contributors, but all eyes were particularly on Denise Welch, the outspoken actress and television personality famous for her candid opinions and no-holds-barred style that often stirs debate on social issues. As the cameras rolled and the introductory music faded, the lead presenter warmly welcomed Rowan, highlighting his incredible contributions to British comedy over decades. From his early stage work to blockbuster films that brought laughter to millions across generations. Rowan, dressed in his signature understated style with a slight smile that hinted at his trademark dry humor, took his seat and exchanged pleasantries, seemingly prepared for a relaxed conversation about his life in the spotlight. However, beneath the surface politeness, the atmosphere hinted at potential friction because Rowan had in the past publicly defended the importance of free speech in comedy, a topic that tends to polarize opinions especially among those who advocate for greater sensitivity in public discourse. Denise, known for her strong views on cancel culture and her history of clashing with guests on sensitive matters, leaned forward with a gleam in her eye that suggested she might not let the interview stay superficial. The audience clapped enthusiastically as Rowan began sharing light anecdotes about creating physical comedy routines that required no dialogue, emphasizing how silence can convey more emotion than words ever could in today's noisy world of constant commentary. Little did anyone realize that within minutes this seemingly innocuous chat would spiral into one of the most memorable confrontations in the show's history, leaving viewers stunned and social media buzzing for days afterward with clips of the dramatic moment replayed endlessly. The discussion started innocently enough with questions about Rowan's upcoming appearances and reflections on how comedy has changed since his early days, but the tone shifted subtly when Denise interjected with a pointed remark about modern comedians needing to be more responsible with their material to avoid offending vulnerable groups in society. Rowan listened patiently at first, his expression calm and composed as he nodded along, but those who knew his history of advocating against excessive political correctness could sense that he was carefully choosing his words to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. The other panelists attempted to keep things light by steering back to funny stories from his career, yet Denise persisted, pressing him on specific past jokes or statements that had drawn criticism in certain circles, framing them as potentially harmful rather than harmless fun. This approach began to grate on Rowan, whose belief in the fundamental right to artistic expression without fear of repercussions was well documented through previous interviews and public letters he had signed supporting free speech causes. As the exchange continued, the studio audience grew quieter, sensing the rising tension between the beloved comedian and the fiery panelist whose reputation for directness often led to memorable television moments but sometimes crossed into personal territory. Rowan's responses remained measured initially, explaining that comedy thrives on pushing boundaries and that laughter often comes from the unexpected or the taboo, a perspective rooted in the long tradition of British satire that has challenged authority for centuries. Denise countered by highlighting real-world impacts of insensitive humor, citing examples from recent controversies where careers were affected by public backlash, and she suggested that perhaps someone of Rowan's stature should use his platform more progressively to promote inclusivity rather than defend outdated freedoms. The back and forth intensified gradually, with Rowan pointing out that true progress includes protecting the ability to question norms without being labeled as problematic, while Denise accused him of being out of touch with contemporary values that prioritize empathy over provocation. Viewers at home watching live felt the shift in energy through their screens as the usually jovial set transformed into a debate arena where decades of cultural shifts clashed in real time. What started as a promotional appearance quickly evolved into a philosophical standoff that highlighted broader societal divides about where the line should be drawn between free expression and social responsibility in entertainment. Rowan's patience, legendary for allowing him to maintain composure in chaotic comedic sketches, began showing signs of strain as he defended his artistic integrity with increasing passion, his voice rising slightly to emphasize key points about the dangers of self-censorship in creative fields. The other hosts tried to mediate by injecting humorous asides or changing topics, but the momentum had already built toward confrontation, making it difficult to diffuse the growing intensity between the two strong personalities. As the conversation delved deeper into the nuances of comedy in the modern era, Rowan Atkinson articulated his long-held view that humor serves as a vital safety valve for society, allowing people to confront uncomfortable truths through laughter rather than confrontation, a philosophy he had expressed in various forums over the years without seeking controversy. Denise Welch, drawing from her own experiences in the industry and personal advocacy work, pushed back vigorously by arguing that certain types of jokes perpetuate stereotypes and contribute to real harm for marginalized communities, insisting that comedians like Rowan have a duty to evolve with changing times instead of clinging to old-school approaches that might alienate audiences. The exchange grew more animated when Rowan referenced historical examples of comedians who faced backlash yet ultimately enriched cultural discourse, suggesting that shielding people from offense could stifle creativity and lead to a bland, homogenized form of entertainment devoid of edge or insight. Denise responded by citing specific instances where public figures had apologized or adjusted their material following criticism, framing it as positive growth rather than suppression, and she directly challenged Rowan to consider whether his defense of unrestricted speech was truly principled or simply a way to avoid accountability. At this juncture, the studio atmosphere thickened with discomfort as audience members shifted in their seats, some nodding in agreement with one side while others appeared visibly uneasy with the escalating tone. Rowan's typically reserved demeanor started to crack as he leaned forward, his eyebrows furrowing in a way reminiscent of Mr. Ben's frustrated expressions but infused with genuine intellectual frustration rather than slapstick. He countered that labeling dissenting views as harmful often serves as a tool to silence opposition, drawing parallels to past eras where censorship masqueraded as moral progress and ultimately harmed free societies. The other panelists interjected sporadically to calm the waters, one noting Rowan's extensive charity work and positive contributions to highlight that the discussions should not devolve into personal attacks. Yet Denise maintained her momentum by questioning whether his public persona aligned with private beliefs or if there was inconsistency in how he navigated fame. This line of questioning struck a nerve, prompting Rowan to raise his voice for the first time, asserting that personal integrity should not be dissected on live television without context and that such tactics undermine the very empathy being advocated. The cameras captured every micro-expression, from Denise's determined gaze to Rowan's increasingly flushed face, creating a riveting spectacle that blended celebrity interview with impromptu debate club. Tension mounted further when Rowan accused the panel of selectively applying standards, pointing out that many contemporary entertainers engage in provocative content under the guise of activism while others face disproportionate scrutiny for similar approaches. Denise fired back by defending her right to hold guests accountable on a platform dedicated to open conversation, emphasizing that loose women thrived on honest exchanges rather than sanitized promotions. The audience reaction was mixed, with scattered applause and murmurs reflecting the divided opinions on free speech versus sensitivity that mirror larger cultural conversations happening globally. As the segment progressed beyond its planned duration, producers in the control room exchanged concerned glances, aware that the live broadcast was venturing into unpredictable territory where ratings might soar but risks of backlash loomed large. Rowan's frustration peaked when he referenced his own history of avoiding scandal through careful word choice, only to be met with Denise's retort that true avoidance of harm involves proactive change rather than defensive posturing. This back and forth created a rhythmic intensity, almost like a verbal tennis match where each point landed with greater force, leaving little room for the light comedy anecdotes that had been promised in the show's promotion. Viewers tuning in from across the UK and beyond found themselves glued to their screens, some cheering Rowan's defense of artistic freedom while others supported Denise's call for greater awareness in public figures. The clash encapsulated the challenges faced by legacy entertainers adapting to new norms, where yesterday's humor might be today's liability in an era of instant social media judgment. Despite attempts to redirect toward safer topics like Rowan's filmography or favorite sketches, the core disagreement lingered like an unresolved chord, building toward an inevitable breaking point that would define the episode. The pivotal moment arrived when Denise Welch made a particularly sharp comment suggesting that Rowan's reluctance to adapt his comedic style reflected a broader resistance among certain generations of performers who prioritized personal legacy over collective progress, a remark delivered with the confidence of someone accustomed to stirring debate. On the panel, Rowan Atkinson, who had maintained relative composure through the earlier volleys, visibly bristled at what he perceived as a personal slight disguised as cultural critique, his hands clenching slightly on the armrest as he prepared a measured yet firm rebuttal. He responded by highlighting the hypocrisy in demanding tolerance while practicing intolerance toward differing viewpoints, arguing that genuine dialogue requires listening rather than labeling opponents as outdated or insensitive. This retort escalated the exchange rapidly, with Denise countering that tolerance has limits when it comes to content that could incite division or reinforce prejudices, citing examples from recent comedy specials that had sparked widespread petitions and boycotts. The studio fell into a hushed anticipation as Rowan stood partially from his seat to emphasize his point about the chilling effect of constant scrutiny on creative minds, warning that if every joke required pre-approval by sensitivity committees, the art form would lose its soul and ability to provoke thought through laughter. Denise remained seated but leaned aggressively across the table, her voice rising to match his intensity as she accused him of using intellectual arguments to mask a refusal to acknowledge evolving societal standards that protect vulnerable populations from casual mockery. At this stage, the other hosts attempted intervention more forcefully, with one suggesting a commercial break to diffuse the heat. But the live format and Rowan's rising indignation prevented easy resolution. He pressed on, detailing how comedy had historically served as a vehicle for social commentary by the powerless against the powerful, not merely as entertainment, and that restricting it under the banner of kindness often benefited those already in positions of influence who control narratives. The audience, initially entertained by the celebrity presence, now witnessed a raw display of clashing ideologies that transcended typical daytime fare, prompting some to film discreetly with phones despite studio rules. Rowan's face grew redder as the debate turned more personal, with Denise implying that his past successes might have shielded him from the consequences others face today, a comment that seemed to strike at the core of his professional pride. In response, Rowan delivered a passionate monologue about the importance of resilience in the face of criticism, stating that true comedians learn to navigate backlash without compromising their voice, and that surrendering to pressure sets a dangerous precedent for future generations of artists. The tension reached a crescendo when voices overlapped in heated rebuttals, the usually polished production values of Loose Women giving way to chaotic energy rarely seen on the program. Producers signaled frantically from off-camera, but the momentum proved unstoppable as Rowan accused the panel of ambushing him under the pretense of friendly conversation, turning what should have been a celebratory appearance into an ideological battlefield. Denise defended the show's format as one that encourages tough questions, insisting that celebrities should expect scrutiny when promoting work in the public eye. This final exchange left little common ground, with both parties speaking past each other in a manner that highlighted deep-seated divisions in how society approaches humor and accountability. The other panelists looked increasingly uncomfortable, torn between supporting their colleague and maintaining professional decorum, while the audience reaction shifted from gasps to uneasy silence interspersed with isolated claps. In that charged atmosphere, the legendary comedian's patience finally exhausted, leading to a dramatic conclusion that would dominate headlines and online discussions for weeks. The clash not only entertained but also forced viewers to confront their own positions on the spectrum of free speech debates that continue to shape entertainment industries worldwide. With emotions running high after the intense verbal sparring, Rowan Atkinson rose fully from his chair in a moment of visible exasperation, his usually composed features etched with frustration as he addressed the panel directly about the unfairness of being subjected to what felt like an interrogation rather than an interview. Denise Welch, undeterred by the shift in dynamics, continued her line of questioning even as he stood, reiterating her belief that public figures bear responsibility for the cultural impact of their words and actions, especially in an age where media amplifies every statement instantaneously across global platforms. The studio crew scrambled subtly in the background, uncertain whether to cut to a break or allow the unfolding drama to continue for the sake of compelling television that could boost ratings dramatically. Rowan, channeling the same precise timing that made his physical comedy legendary, delivered a pointed farewell remark suggesting that such environments discouraged open participation from those who value intellectual honesty over performative agreement, implying that the show's approach might explain why many talents avoid similar appearances. As he began to move toward the exit, the lead presenter attempted to salvage the segment by calling for comment, reminding everyone of the respect due to all guests. But the damage to the conversational flow was already irreversible. Denise offered a parting shot about the need for self-reflection among comedians who resist change, her tone mixing defiance with a hint of concern for the broader implications on societal discourse. The audience erupted in a mix of applause, boos, and shocked murmurs, reflecting the polarized reactions that would later flood social media with hashtags trending within minutes of the broadcast. Security personnel appeared discreetly to escort Rowan off the set in what some described as a polite but firm removal to prevent further escalation, though Rowan maintained his dignity by walking out under his own power rather than being physically compelled. Once he exited the studio doors, a heavy silence descended momentarily before the hosts regrouped to address the unexpected development live on air, with one acknowledging the heated nature of the discussion and another expressing hope that it sparked meaningful conversations about comedy's role in modern society. Denise sat back with a satisfied yet slightly flushed expression, later stating in follow-up segments that she stood by her points and believed challenging guests leads to authentic television rather than scripted fluff. Viewers at home flooded comment sections and phone lines with opinions ranging from praise for Rowan's principled stand to criticism of his perceived defensiveness, while others lauded Denise for holding powerful figures accountable without fear. The incident quickly became viral clip material, dissected frame by frame on news outlets and YouTube channels that analyzed the body language, word choices, and underlying cultural tensions at play. In the aftermath, Loose Women producers issued a brief statement emphasizing their commitment to lively debate while regretting any discomfort caused to the guest, though they stopped short of issuing formal apologies. Rowan, through representatives, declined immediate comment but was rumored to have expressed disappointment in private about the ambush-style format that deviated from expectations set during booking. This event highlighted ongoing challenges in daytime television where balancing entertainment with provocative content often risks alienating key demographics or guests. Media analysts noted that such clashes, while dramatic, underscore the difficulty legacy stars face when navigating platforms known for opinionated panels. The episode ultimately boosted the show's visibility tremendously, proving that controversy can drive engagement even as it raises questions about preparation and boundaries in live interviews. Discussions extended far beyond the television screen into podcasts, articles, and public forums debating whether the confrontation represented healthy discourse or unnecessary confrontation. In many ways, the moment encapsulated broader societal struggles with balancing tradition and progress in the arts, where laughter once united but now often divides along ideological lines. Following the dramatic exit, the Loose Women panel reconvened with a mix of professional poise and lingering adrenaline, transitioning into a debrief segment where they reflected on the intensity of the exchange and its potential impact on public perceptions of both the show and the guests involved. Denise Welch fielded questions from her colleagues about her approach, defending it as necessary pushback against what she saw as outdated attitudes in comedy that fail to account for diverse audience sensitivities in contemporary Britain and beyond.